What if King received powers from God? That's just one of a few very interesting questions that you guys asked me in the comment section of my Q&A post earlier this week, and I'll be answering this question along with a lot of other questions that you guys asked in today's video. Now, I won't be able to get to all of them, so I do apologize for those of you whose questions I did not answer in this one, but I will let you know a little bit later in the video how you guys can 100% get your questions answered every time whenever I do one of these Q&As. Kind of a big announcement, but that's not what today's video is about. Let's get to answering some of your questions. So I'm going to start with the one I just mentioned, and this one is from Died in 2020, and his question is essentially, do you think that King would be as strong as Cosmic Fear Garo if he received powers from God and become an enemy to Saitama and the other heroes? Well, I'm sure many of you have also thought of the possibility of a number of characters receiving powers from God and how much stronger they would be or what kind of new abilities they would have. And it's really interesting with King because the whole, gag with King is that he's just a regular guy that has this reputation of having this ultimate power, being the strongest human, when really he's just kind of lucked his way into where he is now. Well, if we look at another regular human that received powers from God in Homeless Emperor, we see that God is able to turn a regular human with no special abilities to straight up dragon level threats. So we can assume that King would at least be a dragon level threat if he received any form of powers from God. But a lot of people in the community believe that King actually does have some kind of power, some kind of luck factor to him that makes it so he gets, super lucky in all of these crazy situations where any regular person would die, and pretty much fools everyone to think that he has this incredible amount of power. And this kind of leads me to the next question, which is asked by Arctic Winker. Sorry if I butcher some of these names. I'll try my very best to get them right. But he asked, do you think King harnessed and effectively mastered his luck aura on command by turning on his King engine in chapter 169? Or was it activated by what amounts to stage fright by putting himself in between a gang of unruly heroes and their target? So to kind of answer both of these questions together, I think if King received powers from God, assuming that he really doesn't have any type of luck aura or luck factor to himself at a base level, he would at least be a dragon level threat, like how Homeless Emperor was. And assuming that he does receive his powers from God, I think it's almost certain that he'd become evil from his influence. I mean, I don't think that King would receive his powers in the first place because King's a good person, he's a good character, he'd have no reason to accept God's power. But if he did, we've seen that with Garo, who never killed anybody up until the point that he received his powers, just without a second thought, killed all the heroes and all the people were there from his cosmic radiation. So I definitely see God's power corrupting someone's mind in a way that it just turns them evil and kind of directs their actions to things that benefit him. And to get back to Arctic's question, I do think that it was more so just stage fright that kind of messed with him a little bit and got his King engine going out at maximum output, because we see that King isn't really one to, give speeches or to kind of be the center of attention without getting super nervous about it. And I, for one, do think that King actually is a regular person that just kind of has stumbled into this high-ranking S-class life that he lives right now. I don't personally believe he has some kind of luck aura or anything like that, which, I mean, it is possible because this is One Punch Man, so really anything could happen with a lot of these characters. But I think one specifically created King to be that kind of other side of the same coin as Saitama, to where Saitama actually has that unimaginable power, but no one recognizes it. And King has no power, but everyone recognizes him as the strongest human. So I think it's just a kind of a contrasting dynamic that one set up to add some comical relief to the story, but I do think that King does have a larger role in the future. And really quick, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to get your question 100% answered in a Q&A video that I will be posting every week, you can go ahead and click the link in the description to my Patreon, which I just started, and sign up to be an S-Class hero, which is the highest tier. And on top of getting your question featured on a video, you'll also get a patron shout out at the end of all of my videos. You guys will get all the videos I post on this channel a day early. You'll also be able to join a private community to be able to share thoughts and just discuss manga and anime with other like-minded individuals that won't bash on your take or just be toxic for the sake of being toxic. It's kind of our own little safe space, you know? But you know, that's not it. You also get one extra video a week where S-Class members actually get to vote on the topic that gets discussed. In the beginning, I'll actually let you guys in the S-Class throw the idea out there, and the idea that you guys like the most, I'll make a video on it and post it to the channel. But there's not just the S-Class tier. We also have the A-Class hero tier right under it, where you get the shout out, you get a video a day early, and you have access to that private community. And below that, we also have the civilian level where you get a shout out on this channel at the end of the video. So if you guys can, please make sure to check out that Patreon and become a patron today. I would very much appreciate it. And all the money I make from that Patreon goes right back into this channel to help me get, you know, better audio equipment and finally get a video editing software, things like that. So I would very much appreciate you guys supporting me there. But moving on to the next question, John Walker asked, what are your thoughts on all the CGI anime Netflix keeps producing? In my opinion, from just the art style alone, it's unwatchable. Just want to hear your take. Thanks for the question, John, and I gotta agree with you. I mean, most of the Netflix anime, which isn't a lot that I've decided to check out, I have not really been a fan of, primarily because of the CGI. I am, for the most part, not a fan of CGI in general with anime, but what I will say is that there was one anime that I did really enjoy and I think used CGI in the right way, and that's Spriggan. I'm not sure if any of you guys have ever heard of it, but essentially it's about a 16-year-old kid named Yu who's a part of this world organization that collects artifacts that have this unimaginable power scattered around the world, and it's kind of this dynamic between other countries that have their own organizations trying to claim these artifacts for themselves to help grow their country's strength. And I definitely think it was one that used CGI in the right way and didn't make it look so robotic and so just overall cheesy. Diablo the Man asks, will Bakugou come back to life somehow? Now, I haven't covered My Hero on this channel, but I do read it and I do follow it from week to week. And this last chapter with Bakugou dying was crazy, or, you know, seemingly dying. I find it really hard to believe that he's actually being killed off for good here. And a lot of people theorize that Eri's going to be the one that ends up showing up and kind of rewinding a lot of people, including Bakugou, to where they're perfectly fine again. Which, I mean, in my personal opinion, I for one would have never killed Bakugou off in the first place, regardless of whether he was coming back or not, because on one side, he's a fan favorite character that everyone loves, that obviously no one would want to see die, and on top of that, he kind of died in a kind of like a quick anticlimactic way. He just suddenly died, right? And on the flip side of that, if this is just kind of like a fake out and Eri shows up and brings him back to life, or he's brought back to life in some other way, I just think that's like a really cheap way to shock the reader, you know, like fake somebody out with a death, especially one this huge, this important. I personally haven't really liked the direction that My Hero has been going in, you know, recent months. Really since after the first war arc, and this past chapter with Bakugou dying kind of really just put the nail in the coffin for me, because I really don't think that like he should have died in the first place, but even if he did, like it could have been written in a way that was so much more like climactic, more emotional for the reader, and kind of leave up a much more lasting impact on the reader versus just this like quick random death of Bakugou. And I don't know, if he ends up coming back with like some kind of Eri rewind, I just think it'll be such a cheap shot to the readers, like kind of playing their emotions and something like that. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And let me know if you want me to start covering My Hero on this channel. Next question is from Kendo Animations. What threat level would Denji from Chainsaw Man be? Thank you so much, Kendo, for bringing up a Chainsaw Man question, because that's definitely a manga that I've been really trying to push on this channel, but it doesn't get too many views, so I haven't been able to make too many Chainsaw Man videos. But I definitely think that just based off the enemies that Denji has defeated in the past, he is at the very minimum like a demon level threat in his, you know, devil hybrid form. But when he's in his like full-on chainsaw devil form, or like when the actual chainsaw devil appears, I have no doubt in my mind that he's at least a dragon level threat. And we see that in his hybrid form, where his, you know, Denji and Pochita, he's defeated the likes of Bomb Girl and Santa Claus, who I think personally would be demon level threats in the One Punch Man verse. And you know, some could argue that once Santa Claus received power from the Darkness Devil, that she kind of crept up to that dragon level threat, but I wouldn't go as far to say that. Raheem Hutchinson asked, if you know by now, I'm a big fan of One Punch Man, and you. Thank you, by the way, really appreciate it. So what I really want to know is, with the recent chapter confirming the multiverse, would we see a glimpse of another universe in the future? Now, this is an interesting one because I've had theories in the past revolving around the idea of a different universe compared to the one that we're observing in, the One Punch Man verse that we read from week to week. And without, explaining it too much, what I will say is that one of the theories I have for the origins of Blast, besides the one that I made in a video a few weeks back that I'll leave a link in the description for so you guys can check that one out, but another theory that I had for Blast that I actually do plan on making another video for is that Blast is from a dimension or alternate universe where God fully took over Earth and like the universe pretty much, and Blast essentially failed at defeating him and saving humanity, so he used his dimension shifting powers to go to this current timeline, the current universe that we're observing, and tries to eliminate God in that way. It might be the same God or a different God, but he basically doesn't want this version of planet Earth to fall the same way that his version did. So he's kind of like the Saitama of that universe who actually failed. And I don't know, I think that'd be a pretty interesting story, and obviously I don't really have a whole lot of evidence to back it up, but it's definitely a fun theory to think about. The Hermit Man asked, how do you think One Punch Man will end? I figure time travel will be used to take God back to the start of time for a Big Bang Punch. How big of a threat do you see God becoming? Well, first of all, that Big Bang Punch idea I think is pretty awesome. Just the sound of it sounds like a really cool move. I've done a lot of thinking about how I think this series will end, and this is kind of my general thought of maybe not specific events that are going to happen, but how things are just going to completely end. I feel like God will certainly be the final boss of the series, and the final arc will kind of revolve around Saitama in the S-Class taking on God and maybe his most powerful disciples to that point, and we'll end with Saitama having one final showdown with God. But what I also think is going to happen is that even after all of this, after Saitama defeats God, Saitama will still not be recognized as the one above all. And the reason I believe this is because one created this manga as kind of like a satirical manga, poking fun at, various shonen tropes and superhero tropes and things like that. And I think it'd be a very one thing to make it to where, Saitama doesn't become the one above all in everybody's eyes, like how, Naruto becomes Hokage or Luffy's going to become king of the pirates, that kind of stuff. He's going to kind of go in the other direction of that. And I definitely don't see Saitama having a problem with this. I think I just see him kind of going on with his daily life after all those huge events happened. And I'd be totally happy with that. I mean, I don't think a lot of us really care so much if Saitama gets fully recognized for the power that he has. We're just here to enjoy the ride. Infinite Abyss asked, do you think Saitama beats Goku since Saitama transcends space and time and can manipulate the laws of causality, making him 4D or higher? Now, I've definitely gotten a lot of Saitama versus Goku questions and seen a lot of it being discussed in the comments of some of my videos. And although I don't have like a definitive answer on this, because it's really hard to tell with like series that, have different power scaling in their respective universes, what I will say is that in the last few chapters that we've seen in One Punch Man, we could definitely make the argument that Saitama has like universe destroying potential, which is basically what is said of every Goku opponent to this point. So I think that they would definitely have at least a very even fight. Now, if I was forced to give an answer here, I would have to give it to Saitama, seeing as how his whole thing is just having this limitless, uncapped power that doesn't need him to have these like, 3 or 4 chapter long build-ups to have his next power buff. It just happens instantly, and I kind of see Goku more as like Garo, where his growth is exponential as he kind of fights on and tries to match his opponent and kind of powers up on the fly. But as we saw with that chart in chapter 167, I believe, or 168, Saitama's growth is just so much faster than anybody else's that I think he'll eventually leave Goku in the dust as the fight drags on, giving the W to him. Jellygun asked, who do you think the Mad Cyborg is? Now, this one is definitely a super interesting question. It's one that I've thought about for so long. Ever since I started really reading One Punch Man, that was kind of one of the biggest questions in my head. And a lot of people in the community have kind of been split into whether it's either Metal Knight, who created the Mad Cyborg, or it's Drive Knight himself, who is the Mad Cyborg. And personally, I'm leaning more towards the Drive Knight side, just for the simple fact that the guy has always just seemed super sketchy to me. Like in the very first episode you see him in the anime, he's just looking left to right. Like he just looks sketchy. He just looks like a sketchy character. And ever since I saw that in the anime, I'm like, okay, this guy has like something going on that we haven't seen yet. And on the other hand, Metal Knight is kind of presented to be this like cold-hearted, villainous hero, but in all reality, he's just one of those heroes that is kind of like the ends justify the means, where he kind of wants to take the most logical approach to things that minimizes collateral damage, which is why we see that at the beginning of the Monster Association arc, that he just wanted to kind of carpet bomb the Monster Association without sending any heroes down there. And Wagama would more than likely die, but it would limit the casualties and the damage that the heroes would take, and in his mind was the best solution. Which, although, you know, obviously most of us wouldn't agree with that, just kind of like killing an innocent kid to eliminate a problem, it's not so much evil as it is logical of him to kind of want to do that. So I don't think that he's the one that created the Mad Cyborg. I think it's kind of like a red herring up until this point. So I'm definitely on the side of Drive Knight being the Mad Cyborg, or having something to do with the Mad Cyborg. Next question is from Savage Beast 68+1. Do you think the organization is aware of God? I've kind of talked about this in my video trying to discuss the origins of Blast, which again I'll leave in the description below. But I do definitely think that the organization knows about God or his power. And, you know, some people believe that the organization is trying to resurrect God, or their main purpose is to resurrect God because God is kind of like controlling the organization. I wouldn't really go that far because I haven't really seen too much evidence of that in the manga for me to make that kind of claim. But what I have seen some bit of information about is that the organization is aware of God and is trying to harness his power for some kind of end goal. We see that in Tatsumaki's flashback, where she's in the research facility that looks very much like one of the God cubes, that they're experimenting on espers and also creating these like hybrid monsters. And seeing this kind of instantly gave me an idea that the organization is trying to use espers to tap into the cubes and try to harness some of God's power, because we see that when Blast shows up, he's holding one of the cubes, so we can only assume that he got it from that research facility. And what's also interesting, that in the current webcomic continuity, we see that there's these like super powerful monsters showing up, like cyborg monsters that have been modified to become way stronger than they normally would be. I definitely think it connects to what we see in this research facility flashback that Tatsumaki has. And if I haven't said it already, I do definitely think that the research facility that she was in was something owned or run by the organization. And although the organization might not be directly trying to resurrect God, I do think that a few individuals within the organization are going to be the ones that take things a step further and actually resurrect him, aka, you know, Fuzzy from the webcomic, or Drive Knight, who, you know, a lot of people speculate is a part of the organization. And the last question by Laffy Bai: what does your channel name mean? How do you think of this name? Well, to kind of give you guys a quick answer to this, when I first started this channel, I knew that I wanted to talk about anime and manga. So I wanted to have, you know, either anime or manga in the name. And I added anxiety in there because, you know, A, I think it sounds kind of cool, and B, hey, I have anxiety, you know, and I'm sure many of you do as well. Something that we all deal with, you know, having anxiety is okay. It's just kind of learning to deal with it within your daily life. But without getting on a tangent, yeah, that's how I came up with the name. And I think it's kind of taken a different meaning as time goes on, because I've learned that, you know, when I am feeling kind of anxious or have some kind of anxiety building up, when I read manga and watch anime, it kind of starts to slip away. You know, it kind of soothes me in a way. It's kind of like a bedtime story type of thing. So I'm kind of glad that, you know, at this point, the name of the channel isn't just something that I think sounds cool. It actually has some kind of meaning to me, and I hope it does to you guys too. But that's it for today's Q&A, guys. Again, I apologize if I didn't get to all of your questions. But like I said, signing on to be an S-Class hero on my Patreon gives you access to 100% getting your question answered on a Q&A video, along with an extra video a week, getting videos a day early, and having a private community of like-minded individuals where we can all just kind of talk manga and talk anime that we're watching that week or something and just kind of converse like friends, you know? If that sounds like something that you'd enjoy, then be sure to click the link in the description to sign up. And if you can't make it to the S-Class level, then hey, any amount of support is very much appreciated. I appreciate everything you guys have done for this channel up until this point. You know, the comments, the likes, the subscriptions. You guys definitely motivate me to keep going with this channel and to keep pumping out as much content as I can that hopefully you guys enjoy. But until next one, guys, I'll see you later.